Hey guys, welcome back from the Queen City, the Radio City, a warmer city. 60s today, which is nice. I have my sweater on, but the zipper goes down a little bit. Doesn't have to get too hot in here, even though there are lots of lights. You can hear me okay, right? I assume you can hear me okay. People be like, we can't hear you. And other such things. And you can see me. So, at least those two senses are working. You shouldn't be able to touch me, smell me. I'm starting to sing a Who song. Sheldon Hughes right off the gate, or out of the gate. I don't know what I'd do without you, Sheldon. Thank you. I'll show those all a little bit later. You know the deal. I've been promoting this one. We've got Chris, depending on which newscaster you listen to, and I got on the phone with him the other night and got to talk to him first. So I probably should have asked him how to pronounce his last name. Kluwe or Kluwe or Kluwe. Anybody want to guess? Maybe we'll send you something. No, because a lot of people are going to end up guessing all three, and somebody there's got to be like 20 people that'll be right. But I don't know. We're going to figure it out, just like we're going to hear all about his amazing. I don't even know what to call it. I mean, an amazing NFL career, but like Renaissance man. I don't know if they're still playing bassist in a rock band, top ranked guilds in World of Warcraft. If you're into the e-gaming, all of that. Universe. He's written a number of books, including a novel. Wrote a book about sort of what went down with him in his time with Minnesota, with the Vikings, where he broke, I think, pretty much every punting record. And I think some place kicking records too. We'll ask him about that. I know I'm missing stuff because there's just like, oh, well, he became a humor columnist at Deadspin after his initial foray into politics over LGBTQ issues, for which he was likely pushed out of football, kind of an earlier version of Colin Kaepernick. Obviously somewhat different because there was racism in that too, but still, this was owning the libs. The libs aren't allowed to speak out for people's rights. So even though he still was kicking the ball. So I am excited, and I just built this episode around him. But there's other things we need to talk about. Obviously, a huge trade war kicked off today for absolutely no reason. Wall Street Journal even calling it the dumbest trade war. That was their quote, dumbest. He's being ripped by the National Review. Andy McCarthy over there, who, by the way, I can't stand, so don't think I'm endorsing him, had to say that Trump referred to Trump the way he treated Zelensky in the office as, quote, nauseating, that he has, quote, an infatuation with Putin, that Vance was insidious. Yeah, we told you all this. That's the thing. We always are right and you're always wrong, and you always come to us later and say, oh, that's right. You guys knew what you're talking about when they have destroyed everything. No, really, for the 14th time, supply side will work this time. If we just cut taxes on really rich people so they can buy that extra pair of yacht slippers one more time, if we do that for billionaires, I know it's going to work out this time. I know we're not going to blow up the deficit. I know we're not going to cause a massive gap between the wealthy and everyone else, which is going to lead to people not purchasing things because the middle class loses their purchasing power, which is going to lead to, of course, a recession. I know that, and Trump's even sort of pioneering some new ones, because at least the earlier Republican Party understood the value, at least for business, even if they didn't care about the human beings involved, of immigration here and the work of immigrants. But now he's adding that in. Yeah, and tariffs too, which was like abhorrent to Republicans for years. If we just add in tariffs and we just add in some deportations, absolutely, the economy's going to be great. You're not going to have 427% inflation. The dumbest, stupidest people in the world. And every business Republican I know who justified voting for this person, this idiot, this freaking orange spray painted cerebral leaking fool. Like, you should get down on your hands and knees and apologize to all of us. And that's not good enough. That's why I do some of the segments that I do, the FAFO segments, because you did this. There was ample evidence. It literally would have been like going in and opening Jeffrey Dahmer's refrigerator and then being like, let's let him hang out with some young kids. He won't do it again, I'm sure. I mean, he's fine now. Incredible. I see Tony's here, and I like Tony. He seems like a nice guy, even for an Ozarkian, so I'm going to let him in.
I am a nice guy every once in a while. Like, not too much, though. I don't want to be too much of a nice guy.
No, because
I don't like to get that reputation. You know what I mean?
well, if you're too nice, you do though. You get taken advantage of. Like people push you around, and like, okay, phone, stop going off. And whatever you have to find the right. A friend of mine, I should have him on at some point. Wrote a great book. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Damn it. And I've read it, but it was all about how basically what charisma is and how you influence people, in the business of news.
Mhm.
He was, John Neffinger, a great dude based in DC. Some folks may even be familiar with his wife, Elise Hogue, who ran NARAL for about 8 years. Also a great person, two fighters. And he wrote a really good book. And, he said that you need to find the medium point between warmth and strength. If you're all warmth and no strength, you come off as sort of mousy and
Right.
Lindsey Graham-like, although then you also need to have lots of secrets that you're hiding and all the time when you talk and all sorts of other things wrong with you. And if you have all strength, obviously, and no warmth, then you end up coming off like somebody like, Seb Gorka, who I wouldn't argue actually is strong. He's weak. I just meant projecting strength. He tries to project strength when really he's a chubby weirdo loser who never got his PhD. And, and literally the PhD committee in Hungary, which, very trustworthy. I don't know if Orban was in control yet though, but where he got his PhD, like he literally had he picked his if anybody knows how that works, you have a committee that you have to make your argument in front of and convince them that you are worthy. And he picked all the members of the committee. And there's nothing these guys can do that, and by guys, let's include guys and gals, that isn't fraudulent. Like they wouldn't know how to do an honest thing if they walked into it.
So let me ask you, because I want to go on this, because I know you're a student of the book, the famous book, Art of War. Oh. You've probably read that. I actually
can quote if you'd like, but I won't. Go ahead.
No, why? I mean, I've been talking about it a lot lately, and I pointed it out the minute I did, because I watched just after the Zelensky, Trump, JD Vance debacle happened in the Oval Office. I watched it almost within 20 minutes of it happening. And I had a weird angle and a weird clip on the show, but I was listening and kind of commenting. And what I saw was, this is what Trump always does and what MAGA always does. We call it projection, because I guess that's the easiest way to describe it for people who aren't familiar with the book, The Art of War. But people like Donald Trump, people like Zelensky, people like Justin Trudeau, people like Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, the Saudis, they are all familiar with the book Art of War. And the reason why is because a lot of times it's the MO of these,
I would argue men. Everybody you said, but I can't guarantee you Trump is.
No, I almost bet that Roy Cohen.
Stupid.
Well,
somebody is familiar with it around him and employs things from it.
Right.
But I'm being dead serious here. I'm not even making a joke. I hate Vladimir Putin as much, if not more, than Trump, which is hard to say about anybody. I promise you, he's read that book 1,000 times. Whatever I think of him, he's smart. Right. Trump is so stupid that I don't know if he can actually sit down and read a book. I really don't. If he has the willpower and the brain power. But yes, somebody around him is definitely familiar.
Now, the reason why it feels a little weird to me, because I have read The Art of War and I have studied it, and I find it a little ridiculous in our time. And the reason why is because everyone's read it, so everyone knows the secrets, right? So this way of doing deception, when everyone knows the deception that is at foot, isn't actual deception anymore. It's known as projection. So if you know someone like Trump or Vladimir Putin or anyone really, their MO is to take the main tenement from The Art of War, which is to project your weakness as strength and your strength as weakness. It is constantly what Trump is doing. It is the reason why we accuse him of lying, is the reason why we accuse him of fraud, is the reason why we call him a con man, is because that's what they do. That's how they become and how they remain in power, is this art of deception. Now,
Trump,
yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing is though, when you say everyone, I think you're probably just talking about sort of people in the leadership class.
That's right. Right. The people in
politics,
power,
because clearly if everybody had read it, the problem is a lot of our population is not functionally literate.
Right.
And I say that, I mean, that is facts, right? I mean, that is facts, as I'm calling people functionally illiterate, which is so clearly I'm not fully functionally illiterate.
It's all right. You're on the horn. You're on the horn with a hick here. So you're fine.
But that was actually a lot of fun to say it the wrong way, to conjugate a verb wrong as I was saying other people were illiterate. But most people aren't reading books like that to begin with. And I would tell you that, second of all, there are a whole lot of people that are in leadership and whatever, that how intelligently there's reading it and there's understanding it.
And then there's implementing it. And then there's implementing it. So yes. those are different. Those are different lanes of the road.
Yes. Trump, the thing about him that, and again, I've admitted this numerous times before, the one intelligence he has, and almost as a reminder of why he is a beast from, earlier forms of humans, okay, is he does not have any intelligence that is 21st century intelligence, but he has animal intelligence from a period before we had a parietal lobe and things of that sort.
So you're saying he's a smooth brain? Is that what you're saying?
He's definitely a smooth brain. He walks in a room and he couldn't tell you how, but he instinctually knows how. And this is why he's so often. This is why when he's on the ballot, these guys come out and vote for him who would never vote for Vance or Tom Cotton or Cruz or all these other nothings. I don't understand Trump's charisma in the slightest, but it works on them, which is he knows what they want to hear. He knows also that he's lying. Let me try to say this the best I can say it. He knows he's lying. Mm-hmm. They know, I think for the most part, he's lying. He knows that they know he's lying.
And right? They know that he knows that they know that he knows
he's lying.
Right.
And yet he still says it.
Right.
And they still eat it up because it sounds good. And that's sort of what I'm getting at, is he has this, and that's what some good salesmen and saleswomen have. But
can I tell you what I think it is? Can I tell you what I think it is? Because where I'm from, right, we do not operate in this arena of art of war. We don't do deception.
Not true. I saw the show.
Oh, no.
When what's his name's wife had to go to Jeff City and she had to win the gambling boat permissions, she definitely was engaging in that. And I know that TV show tells me
what you have to understand
about the Ozarks.
But what you have to understand is that was
I'm gonna
Marty
do this forever,
Bird's, that was Marty Bird and his wife, which they were from Chicago. They were not from the Ozarks.
Oh.
Yeah.
But what about the guy who was like the Koch brothers guy that lived in Jefferson City? He understood it.
Well, and, again, there might be exceptions, but where I come from, the normies walking around, the normies walking around do not operate in that MO. Our MO is, if you mess with us, we will break your legs. Like, we will tear your arms off and we will beat you to death with them. Like, that's kind of when you get into the country, when you get into these places that are not as sophisticated as other parts of America, they don't operate under those kind of rules, under those kind of boundaries. And that's why when they see Trump and he's operating buffooner, this buffoon is operating in that arena, they see themselves in him operating in that arena, which he is clearly not qualified to operate in. When Vladimir Zelensky is sitting at the president of Ukraine, where his countrymen are dying because Vladimir Putin has invaded his country. You can say what you want about him, elections and political parties and all this nonsense and martial law and on and on and on the nonsense goes. The difference between Donald Trump and Zelensky is Donald Trump would leave us out to dry in a negotiation with Putin. Donald Trump would give up all our minerals. He would give up all our freedom. He would give up.
If he could turn us into a goo that he could sell with a machine, he would do that.
And Vladimir Zelensky, President Zelensky, did not do that. He did not sit there and take that bullshit from JD Vance sitting on the couch that he wanted to be in instead of on. And definitely the buffoon in the clown suit.
Well played. Remember, and look, maybe Zelensky as a president should have brought a love seat for him, and maybe that would have made everything
right.
Made everything just a new one.
That'd have been the Valentine's Day gift, right?
A smooth leather one, with some nice creases in it.
Right, sexy curves on it, some sexy curves. Yeah.
And again, one of the ones that vibrates too.
Yeah, right. Maybe one that's like wrapped in the plastic, so it's easy.
I could get JD going something fierce, but the truth of the matter is, like all you need to know about Zelensky, okay? Because he could have been anybody, right? He was clearly a smart person because to me, and I've said this before, and there's a reason conservatives fail at most creative endeavors. Because to be creative, you have to be able to see outside yourself. You have to be able to understand different people, the world. So writing a novel, writing a screenplay, creating art, a painting, anything of that nature, if you can't sort of think outside of who you are, you can't do it. And I say that often about comedians too. There are exceptions, obviously. And he was a great comedian. So he has an ability to perceive other people in certain ways. But beyond that, beyond the fact that I'm assuming, and that doesn't make it 100% true because of that, but that he probably is a pretty smart guy because he was successful as a comedian. It's to me that moment. And we gave him that moment, and NATO gave him that moment, which is when Ukraine was attacked, they said, you will get safe passage out of the country. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm not leaving my country. I'm not ditching my country. You think I'm going to go live in London or somewhere, Paris or somewhere safe and conduct? No. What the fate of my countrymen is my fate. That is the kind of heroism that I don't even know that I have words to describe, because I think there are a lot of people out there who have a lot of courage who still don't have that kind of courage. That is on a whole other level. That is so far away from anything that JD Vance or Donald Trump possess, much less most American leaders have never had to face that prospect at all. You know what I mean? It just you can't sort of compare it almost. And so I think that's something to, about him. And so they can project their strength and act tough, Captain Bone Spurs there and little Ivy League boy who could have actually come back to the area that he claimed was so poor and so, so downtrodden, even though his family made over 100,000 a year and he didn't really live in Appalachia, and his whole origin story is a lie.
Well, I mean, his name is a lie. It's not even his real name.
He's had 5 of them, which I use often. I point that out. No, seriously. Like it was J.D. Hamill. It was John, it was John David.
J.P. Mendel.
I mean, exactly. Well, that's what his name should have been. But
right.
The thing is that, and I've said this often before, who does that? Right. That has often been one of the biggest giveaways to me. Everybody gets, as you would say in golf, a mulligan. Or as Trump would say, but he takes many of them by cheating. And I don't really play golf, but I know what that is. And everybody gets, you have a name. Like my name is, if you want the full one, is Clifford Douglas Schechter. I like Cliff. If I didn't like it, I'd maybe go by Doug. Instead, I like the name a lot. My wife liked it a lot, so that's the name of my first son. Right? We kept it in the family, but I didn't like it. If I decided I wanted to be called Doug instead, as I have friends who want to go by their initials, there's nothing wrong with that. But
there's nothing wrong with the nickname, but you change
when you change your name multiple times, when you change your name, when you go beyond like once to 2 or 3 or 4 or I mean, we're talking now deep insecurities, deep issues, all sorts of problems. Just that alone tells me what's wrong with you. Right? That alone tells me that you don't know who you are. If you don't even know what your name is, you don't know who you are.
Set aside the sexual set aside the sexual attraction to couches and sofas, but
right. Because look, well, it's happened to all of us, right? There's a couch that, has a particularly nice shine and the light coming in the window on a certain day hits it just right. No. Okay.
You get these feelings about the cushion, right?
I'm sorry?
Pressed up you get these feelings about the cushion. It's pressed up against you, you know, that sort of thing.
Well, you know what they say in Spinal Tap. I don't know if I can say it. I make it.
Yeah, you're gonna get this whole thing demonetized here.
Something about a cushion being larger and the pushing being sweeter, but it.
Oh,
rhymes.
Okay. Yeah.
More
cushion for the
Right. The bigger the cushion, the sweeter the.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I
mean, again, I don't know what is monetizable and what is not. But of course, I know what is not. I know what is not. Trust me, I know what is not.
Here's what I know. Here's what I know is someday RTMP is going to work. I'll be doing this on Substack too.
Oh, okay.
And YouTube, if they want to demonetize me on this till the end of time, I will just have a large middle finger for them. And I will start saying what I want to say. But we're not at that point yet.
You can tell them to go screw the couch. Is that what you can tell them?
I can tell them to go perform a JD Vance on the couch. I think if you start the best way to go after those guys is you start to use their names as actual verbs.
Right.
I was just reading again. I've talked about his stuff before because I think he's one of the most talented writers I've ever read. And you've had him on your show, Greg Olear.
Oh yeah, great friend.
I mean, he's such a good writer.
He is.
And what was
the way that he describes things is great.
Yes, it is. And so he used Merrick Garland as a verb. And he was saying Democratic leaders must stand up now. Enough of this, enough of that, enough of whatever. He's like, you don't get to Merrick Garland our democracy at this point. And I was like, well put. So
good old Greg. Good old Greg Olear.
Yeah, he's a smart dude. So I was talking before you came on about how even right now, between the Zelensky thing and the tariffs, Trump's theoretical allies, the non-elected ones, elected ones, of course, are all scared because they're wimps, but are just, the stuff they're saying about it. The Wall Street Journal called it the dumbest tariffs ever, I believe was their quote.
Yeah.
Fox News was fact-checking his claims on the tariffs and pointing out that he was wrong about everything.
Well, what he did essentially, because Justin Trudeau came out this morning and basically, I think he said it's the dumbest thing ever. I think is what the words that Justin Trudeau used, or it's a dumb thing to do, something like that. He called it dumb.
Yeah.
But really, honestly, what Trump has done is given all the cards, because he liked to say that in the Oval Office with Zelensky's when he's talking about lives, but we're talking about dollars here. He gave all the cards back to Justin Trudeau here. He gave all the cards back to Canada. And really, honestly, if the trade between Canada, the United States, and Mexico is so bad, it is because of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump wanted to renegotiate NAFTA. It was one of the key things that he did that his administration actually got done besides giving more tax breaks to billionaires. It was the trade agreement that he
But remember,
updated.
I don't want to, but to make the point, that's still when Donald Trump, in that earlier term, when he still had some, not all, but some legitimate actual people working for him who knew how to make these things happen. Yeah.
But if the deal in our trade is so bad between us, Mexico, and Canada, the person who's at fault, it's him. But the problem is the buck. Trump never sees as the buck stops with him. That's a famous saying from the president from my state of Missouri, Harry Truman.
That's right.
As the buck stops here. But and he had it on his desk. But tonight in this State of the Union, or shit on the union address, as someone in my chat called it, Donald Trump is going to do the exact opposite. The buck is not going to stop with him. He's always going to blame it on someone else. He's always going to put the responsibility and the accountability on someone else. It's not going to be his fault. He's going to whine and complain about Trudeau. And you really, should all be ready. He made Trudeau strong here. He made Trudeau strong here.
And you should all be ready for a lot more. Whether on TikTok, YouTube, wherever you are, some of these are coming up on Substack these days too. A lot more FAFO videos and FAFO stories, because again, they get it, right? The president of Mexico, Sheinbaum, Trudeau, Xi Jinping, like, even though he's a murderous, and I could say a lot of bad things, he's smart, sadly, which isn't helpful. It is in this situation because what he's going to do is, and what they're all going to do is, they're going to target red states.
They're going to damage us.
Yes.
And they're going to damage Trump.
Yes, they're going to target the red states in hitting us back. And I do believe I see a Mr. Chris. I think he is there, and I'm going to miss. Here we go. I got to add Chris to the stage. Hey, buddy,
Chris,
how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good. You know, I listened to. I realized talking on the phone the other day. I heard news reports of various things, and they'd said Kluwe or Kluwe or Kluwe, and I'm like, how am I too stupid to ask him on the phone so that I get it right? So now I'm going to admit to you that you just came on a live stream with somebody too dumb to ask you about your last name right away.
No, it's fine. It's I get it a lot. It's Kluwe.
Okay, Kluwe. So one of the three of them got it right. Good for them.
Yeah, not bad.
Hey, but you got to throw a dart at the board, right?
Right.
Chris,
you miss all the swings you don't take.
Right, exactly.
This is Tony Michaels, who has his own show and joins me at the beginning of this show often, and inspired me to start doing this. And he's in Missouri and fights for some of the very same things that we're fighting for.
Yeah, I'm just a hick from Missouri, but it's nice to meet you, Chris. And I gotta get running here. But I'm glad that we got your name sorted out before Cliff got started. We wouldn't want that embarrassment to continue through the interview here.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for doing the work in Missouri. I know that's not an easy place to.
It is a hell of a state, but I think we are in a position, as Cliff was just mentioning, that we may see these tariffs, the retaliatory tariffs, affect red states. It's going to affect states like mine. It's going to affect
mine too here in Ohio and Cincinnati, where I'm based.
It's going to affect everyone,
right? It's going to affect everyone, but they're going to really try to target and let Trump feel the heat. They're his supporters. So we'll see how it works out. But Chris, it's good to meet you, Cliff. Thanks for having me on today, and I'll let you guys get to your conversation. I can't wait to go back and watch it. So we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks for being here, buddy.
Yep, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Chris Kluwe, I got it. I'm ready to move forward. So how goes things in general? Now you're going to a protest today, right?
Yeah, so not necessarily a protest, but it definitely there will be people there in opposition. We have our city council is doing a press conference to explain why the ACLU is suing the city for book bans in the library. I'm curious to see what kind of spin they try to put on it, because it's been very obvious what they're doing is a book ban. So yeah, that'll be fun. And then we actually have our biweekly city council meeting today. This one's going to be on the budget, and I'm also really curious to see how they're going to balance the budget, because that's not something I don't think they're going to be able to make happen.
Yeah. Well, I need to. I mean, no, it doesn't sound like. I mean, also seeing the pictures of you arrested there. I don't want to be too stereotypical, but there look to be some older white gentlemen there of the kind that often one sees when they look over at the Republican caucus in the House. So I almost included that in my thumbnail, but it was more important to get you in there and what was going on. I was thinking, because I was looking at this, that the way that they will balance the budget is it will be magical, alluring, galvanizing, and adventurous all at the same time.
Yep, that it will. I'm anticipating they're probably going to try to cut a whole bunch of services that residents need in order to keep funneling money to things that residents don't need, like the air show settlement. And they're talking about doing this like light installation in our Central Park area near the library. And it's like, I don't know anyone who asked for this thing. The Central Park area is also a wildlife preserve, and the citizens of the city want to know, hey, that environmental impact report, we would like to see the whole thing, because they have not shown us the whole thing.
It'd be nice, like you live there, to kind of know what's going on around you. So just so folks know, the magical, alluring, galvanizing, which I was going to make all sorts of jokes about because it's so ridiculous, adventurous. If you take the first letter from each of those, you'll spell out MAGA, and that's their way. That was how they found a way to put a plaque on a public library that extolled MAGA. And that's where a lot of this began, where Chris went in and gave this terrific speech where, I couldn't even write it all. I mean, you obviously went into all of it, but how MAGA stands for resegregation and racism. Good alliteration, by the way. You're a writer.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And this stands for the firing of FAA while planes are crashing. And you really got a lot of stuff in there. And then you my favorite part, obviously, as you said, in American tradition, you're going to commit an act of civil disobedience. And I guess you weren't allowed to cross the cordon. Is that what it was? And walk down to the floor and approach all these old white guys with high cholesterol levels who were
right.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what. I'm not sure what the exact rule was that I broke, but yeah, it's. I know the cops were on me pretty quick, and I think it just goes to show that this city council, they're expecting their community to do something to them because they know they're unpopular and they know they're not actually listening to the community.
Right.
And even the layout itself in the city council chambers is now very adversarial. It feels like it's like you at the podium versus them, behind their big desks. Whereas before, the speaker podium was off to the left, and you were kind of speaking both to the city council as well as the people in attendance at the same time.
Right.
So it felt, more like actually addressing your community. So yeah, it didn't surprise me that, they view this as like they have to protect themselves from their community because they don't listen to their community, and they haven't been listening to their community.
Right. Right. And it was, how slowly you were walking towards them and the fear on their faces. Like, I'd be careful. I
They
might have a sniper.
Did you hear? I charged them.
Oh, so they said, Jesus, you were walking. So it was like, they probably have snipers in there at this point. Be very careful about you.
Yeah.
The whole thing was so ridiculous. But then again, like, we're so used to this. Not used to it. I guess I'll never get used to it. But, when they just lie and lie. So for people that don't know, like, Chris is, and I almost feel like, so let me do a little overall introduction. And I won't take 2 hours. But my God, Chris,
I have a lot of hobbies.
you like stuff.
Yep.
All American, went to UCLA, ended up being drafted out of college as a punter. You were a place kicker too.
In high school, yeah, just punting. In college in the pros.
Punting. And then you just went to. The only thing I forget, I know you ended up Minnesota as the body of your career, where you broke records, and then you were with Oakland for a bit. Who was it who drafted you originally, and then they had to leave you on waivers, and Minnesota grabbed you?
Seattle, and I was an undrafted free agent. They were in contact with my agent at the end of the draft. They said we're either going to take him in the 7th round or pick him up as an undrafted free agent immediately after the draft. So they ended up picking me up as an undrafted free agent, and it was legit. Like, the draft had ended, and like 2 minutes later, I got a phone call saying, "Hey, we want you to come to tryouts for the Seahawks."
Right, and obviously there's probably all sorts of rules around that I can claim I don't know, but one of them, which I learned reading about you, was that you had to be put on waivers because they wanted you to, and Minnesota grabbed you. You broke pretty much every Minnesota record when it came to punting in existence.
I didn't break all of them, but I broke most of them.
So you're not bad at punting, is what I'm going to say.
I was okay.
And I noticed, like, it's funny just what you notice or whatever. And obviously, somebody interested in both sports and interested in politics has been my career in various ways. I remember 2012, so a very different world for you youngins out there. But there were movements and sadly, we may get back there if the Supreme Court overturns the ruling, which, by the way, Oberfell was from here in Cincinnati.
They're looking at taking out Oberfell.
Yep. And I got to meet him at one time. Incredible. So he's from here in Cincinnati. I think a very important point you made at one time is how, California is very red, very blue, but it doesn't mean there aren't red areas. I try to remind people, sadly, Ohio is very red, but Cincinnati and Hamilton County has been going steadily much more blue. Right. Where I am is Oberfell's from this area. And they're going to try to take that out. And so, but at the time, we didn't have Oberfell yet. So there are states trying to pass, bans. And you had a teammate who had spoken out against marriage equality, among other things, I believe. And did you just speak out first? I'm trying to remember. Did you write that gorgeously named piece for the?
So I've been approached by a group called Minnesotans for Marriage Equality in the summer of, that would have been 2012, I believe.
Yes.
Either 2011, I think. Anyway, so they approached me in the summer and said, "Hey, the state is proposing this amendment that would ban same-sex marriage, and we don't think that's okay. We follow you on Twitter, and we think you'd like to get involved in something like this." And I thought about it. I was like, "Yeah, I think I would like to get involved in something like this because I don't think we should be enshrining discrimination into state constitutions. I don't think that's particularly American of us." So yeah, got involved with them. Then I'd heard Brendan Iambadejo was the other player. He played for the Ravens for a long time. And he had been speaking out on a similar measure in Maryland. And so there's this delegate in Maryland, State Senator Emmett C. Burns Jr., who sent a letter to the team that essentially said, you need to stop talking about this, shut up and play football, right? Which, people are allowed to have their opinions, but the problem is, as an elected public official, you can't tell someone to stop talking and send it on official state stationery. Like that is,
yeah. That's. I mean, it reminds me a lot right now, where
right,
we're for free speech, and where you guys have weaponized this against us, and all the Jim Jordans and these people, and then of course, anytime somebody says something about Donald Trump or even doesn't, he's like, all right, we're suing CBS because they made Kamala Harris look too good.
So clear First Amendment violation. So I wrote a letter for Deadspin, essentially an open letter to the delegate, where I said, and they titled it. It was just such a great title. Like I didn't even have a title when I submitted the piece, and then when I saw what they had gone with, I was like, oh, that's perfect. They called it "They Won't Magically Turn You into a Lustful Cock Monster." So basically,
I just got you to say that on here. That makes me so happy. YouTube may demonetize me, and I don't even care because it's worth it for that.
Right.
Go ahead.
But yeah, so anyways, so the point of the piece was, there are 2 points to it. One, this is a First Amendment violation. Like we can't have officials, doing stuff like this because that goes against the First Amendment. But then the other part, the bigger part was gay people, like they're not going to turn you gay, right? Like gay people just want to live their own lives. They want to be able to get married and then, share finances and pass stuff down.
Healthcare and things like crazy stuff.
Exactly. Like all the basic legal protections of the state that non-gay people get to enjoy. And so it's like, hey, why are you trying to keep these people from just living their lives? And, today we're seeing that happen right now with our trans community. Like they lost the war against gay people. Now they're coming after the trans people, and they're using the exact same tactics. They're using the exact same attacks. And we need to stand up and say, it didn't work last time. It didn't work when you wanted to be racist and segregate the country. Like, just leave people alone. Let them live their lives.
Right. And they can't sell it. So it always has to be a group of, or usually 2 or 3 groups. They've got immigrants now too, of course.
Right. Yeah.
But they've always got their 2 or 3 or so that they can say everything would be great. I mean, there'd be no problem. We wouldn't have all this inflation, even though I'm getting into tariff wars because I'm a freaking moron. Right. And and some of the orange spray paint my hair ripped into my cerebral cortex. I mean, so they need the folks to blame when they inevitably screw everything up, because they do, because they're only trying to make rich people richer, and that never works out. And our economy always crashes, and there's always the middle class suffers, and there's more disparity. My interest is what got you to that point in terms of, were you raised in a politically active family, or was these beliefs you came to in college or on your own somehow, or?
So for me, definitely just through kind of like personal growth and, just seeing the world the way it was. My family was not political at all. Like I don't think we ever really talked about politics around the dinner table or anything like that. Pretty sure my parents are like small C conservatives, like we don't want to pay as many taxes, but we're cool with people, being who they are. And there's a lot of conservatives like that in California, where like that's why they voted for Arnold Schwarzenegger as governor, right? And Arnold Schwarzenegger would have been considered a Democrat, like in any deep red state.
Right, he was liberal on like every social issue, and
exactly.
Endorsing.
So for me, it was a lot of it was just kind of as I grew up, as I became more aware of other people around me, of other cultures around me. I want to live my life to be free to be who I am. But if some other person doesn't have that same opportunity, then I won't have that opportunity, because eventually someone's going to come and oppress me. And so that's why it's imperative that for those of us who currently do enjoy the protections of our country and our states, like that we're out there speaking out against oppression, that we're out there supporting people who need help and need to be supported, because we can afford to do so. And we can't expect the oppressed to fight every battle. Like we got to be there to help them and to lead the way in a lot of cases, because I'm under no illusions that my arrest would have gone way differently had I been a black trans woman.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have gone quite the same way.
Right. And I think you're about 6'4" or so. You're a big guy.
Yeah,
so
that's
it
6'4".
probably
Yeah.
wasn't as easy to rough you up in the way that I'm sure that some of these guys are. I mean, just everything about it, right? And that it was in front of cameras as opposed to God knows what they do. But you're absolutely right about all those points, and that's sort of why I've always. I mean, I can't stand bullies, and I can't stand seeing people who are cruel, which makes life really hard in this country right now.
Right. Well, and I think another important thing too is like, and it sounds really childish when you say it, but I think it is an important thing to sort of internalize and understand is that when you hear someone say that's not fair, like a lot of people, when they hear that, right, think, oh, you're just being a kid, you're on the playground, right? You're complaining that that's not fair. But our country legitimately right now that's not fair. Like it's not equitable. It's not equality. Like what they're doing is not building a better America. It's plundering America for the benefit of the very few. And so we all have to come together and say, no, this is not fair. Like this is not what America is supposed to be about.
No, I saw you talking about that at a certain point too, the corruption, there's just, when you start getting into the FAA, I mean, they're letting people watch the nukes go. They're letting the people that pay attention to Ebola go. I mean, at some point, the insanity of all of it as they're trying to get rid of basically our entire bureaucratic state that's been in place for 100 plus years. Right. I did a show here. I talked all about sort of, Teddy Roosevelt and the FDA, creating that. People are being poisoned by food and trying to get clean water and, all these agencies that were passed in the early 20th century. And then, of course, a lot during the New Deal. I mean, when I read, it didn't shock me. And I saw they're trying to get rid of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, right? They're trying to yes, because that's what you want people to put their money. You're really going to encourage people to put their money in banks so they think it could just disappear.
And I would hope that people understand that we don't have these regulatory agencies because we wanted to, give someone a plush job. We have these regulatory agencies because people were dying. And this was the way to stop people from dying. You may not see all the work that they do, but they're really important.
Yeah, I've tried to make a couple of those arguments on here. One is we too easily, finally, there are some Democrats who are speaking up more or hitting back more. It's mostly of younger generations who are really leading the way. We need more of them. But we let them, and it was really Reagan, define this as a bloodless thing that people, and that we didn't make it human for people. We just said regulations are bad. Well, when you just hear the word regulations, sure, it sounds bad. But if it's the guy that makes sure your plane doesn't crash or that your food doesn't poison you or a car doesn't go 147 miles per hour while a guy's chugging, Jim Beam on the highway, well, then you kind of appreciate regulations at those moments. And that's, and we allow them to do that, to define it in the abstract as opposed to humanizing it. And that's right now what I'm trying to do too, is those regulations, but then also we let them do that with the bureaucracy, right? I mean, the folks that are in these jobs are mostly there because they're experts and they're passionate about what they do. They care about saving people. They care about helping people. Many of them can make a lot more money in the private sector. They're not just they going there for an easy gig. Go ahead. Sorry.
Right. They want to serve their country. Like that's the vast majority of federal workers are there because they want to serve us as citizens. And they're tearing it, like this administration is tearing all that apart. And for what? Like it's not going to make us as a country better. It's going to cause significant amounts of harm, which we're already seeing. And then it really feels like this administration doesn't know how to build anything. They only know how to break and then take things for themselves. And we can't run a country like that. You can't run a country by breaking everything, because then your country's just going to fall apart.
No, I mean, you couldn't be said better than that. They don't know how to create. They just know how to destroy, right? And that's all they seem to know how to do. Rip apart and divide. And I mean, can anybody think of one policy that they've proposed that it's about creating? I suppose creating a wall, that did really well. And it didn't even get created because he can't even do that right.
But I think they've created a lot of fear. They're good at that.
Okay, there you go. We can give them some creative chops
Right?
there. I mean, you know, they may not be writing novels or
Yeah.
you know, which it makes me want to get back to sort of to you just for a little bit and sort of your background and everything. So you had that whole episode happen when you spoke out about gay marriage, about equality, and magically, like from MAGA,
Right.
they didn't want you in Minnesota anymore, huh? Even though you still, like, I know you'd gotten injured, and maybe I don't know, even if you weren't still breaking records at that point, you still were at the very least a very good kicker at that point, right?
Yeah. So the surgery that I had after that year was just a routine orthoscopic, just clean out some cartilage. Because it had been bugging me for like the previous, I think, like 4 years. And it was never anything that was affecting my kicking. It was just like occasionally I'd feel the cartilage slip, and it, you know, felt like my knee would lock up a little bit. And eventually I was just like, I want to get this taken care of. But yeah, up through that season, my stats were the same as they'd been all the previous years with the Vikings. And the one thing that kind of sucks is that every single special teams coach I had told me, like, Chris, we know you can blast the ball. We need you to kick it higher and shorter because our coverage units aren't, like, we don't have the best coverage units. So we need you to sacrifice some of your numbers in order to, you know, let us cover the ball. And I was like, well, yeah, I want the team to win. So that's what I'm going to do. And so it's like, just on a personal level, it is extremely frustrating to watch people be like, oh, well, you know, he was falling off. He couldn't kick it as far anymore. I'm just like, you never came to practice.
Right. You're just like, okay, give me the damn ball right now. And how about you watch what I can do? You know, and so they betrayed you. They got you to not kick it as far for the betterment of the team, and then use that against you when clearly now weren't you either had a argument discussion with a coach, or you overheard a coach, or what was the story there?
Yeah, no. So that was my special teams coach. He made some homophobic comments, and was really, it felt like it was a personal thing in terms of the remarks that he was making throughout the season, and definitely made me feel uncomfortable. And I think, like, you know, that was one of the main reasons why they let me go, is because, you know, it's a mix of, oh, well, we just don't want to deal with the attention, and then also when my direct superior, who's in charge of whether or not I have a job, you know, is disagreeing with me quite vociferously.
Yes, is a bigot, and you're not.
Right, yeah. Which again, to be clear, I'm not talking about this stuff at the facility. Like, I'm there to kick a football. Like, when
you're coming in every day and saying like, hey, let's talk about various policy here.
Right, yeah, let's get out the picket signs and, you know, start marching around the locker room. It's like, no, it's not my job. But when I'm a private citizen, I get to be a private citizen.
Right. And they just could not accept that.
Yeah.
And so they cut you. Oakland picks you up. Do you think Oakland lets you go for the same reason?
No, I think Oakland was a legit competition. The problem was Marquette King. He was just better than I was. He was able to kick the ball better. He was younger. They could get him for cheaper. So I have no issues with how it played out in Oakland. Like, that was definitely a competition. I did my best. He won the competition. And that happens, right? Like, you know,
of course,
someone is better than you. Like, and he actually had a really good career up until he started speaking out a lot. Mainly just, you know, getting upset at his coaches and saying stuff that the team was like, okay, well, we don't want to deal with this anymore. But he was a great punter. But then the thing that really kind of showed me that I wasn't going to play in the NFL anymore was I had a tryout with Cincinnati, actually, when Kevin Hubert broke his jaw on you remember, it was a Sunday night football game. Dude blindsided him and like blew his jaw up. And I was actually in Minnesota for the Metrodome's all 50-year team. They were, you know, honoring me as the punter for their, you know, all 50.
Clearly, you weren't that good, so yeah.
Right, clearly not that good. So like, I'm sitting at the dinner table with some friends because we'd gone out to eat, and I'm just like, dang, they're probably gonna call me tomorrow. and yeah, sure enough, got a call. They asked me to come in, you know, for a tryout, and that was one where I legit felt I had won the tryout, because that was the year they were making a playoff run. They just needed a veteran guy who could directional punt and, you know, put it over by the sideline. And I felt that I had displayed that in the tryout. And then they went with another guy who'd shanked a couple, cut him after 2 weeks because he shanked a couple. And then they picked up Zoltan Mesko. Now, Zoltan's a great punter. He's a great dude. I have no issues with Zoltan. Zoltan wasn't at the tryout, though. So that tells me.
Right.
Like,
that they had something against you. And I was going to make the argument anyhow. I was going to say, you know, in defense of the Bengals, they can screw anything up.
Yeah,
So,
right.
it could have been based on, I should stop that. But
football fandom's a wonderful world, isn't it?
yes. There was a time actually when they, and this is, I don't know how many years ago, what was his name? Perfect, the guy with the crazy kid.
Oh God, yeah, that dude was a terror on the field.
My wife had fallen asleep, and she's from here. That's how I grew up, actually, in New York City on the East Coast. And I ended up here, and I remember waking her up and being like, the Bengals are so far ahead, they can't even screw this up, because she always said, "Don't believe in the Bengals; they'll break your heart." And then that whole thing happened where I wish I remembered how many points they were up and how quickly they gave it away, but it has to be something close to an all-time record. I mean, I think I feel like they were up with like 13 points with like a minute left, or I don't remember what it was. And they found
then Perfect went headhunting.
Yes. And I was like, okay, sweetie, I'll never wake you up, and I'll never do that again. Okay, so you get through all that, and so you think, I mean, and Cincinnati, again, this used to be when the country broke down a little differently, when it wasn't sort of urban and suburban, inner suburbs more versus rural and ex-urban, this did used to be a pretty conservative city. I mean, Marge Schott owned the Reds. She made a couple of colorful statements.
Yeah, she's a little racist.
She's just a little racist, a little, Hitler did some good things kind of thing that came out of her mouth at one point. Good things for the economy. It's always something like that. And then, there are also, people may know from People versus Larry Flint. He was chased out of this town. I mean, this did used to be a more conservative town, but obviously demographic patterns changed in our country, and who decided to live in cities tend to be younger, more open-minded folks, and cities changed in inner suburbs. So it's gotten different. So, I mean, even back then, though, when you were trying out, it hadn't come to where it is today, even 12, 14 years ago. So there's still some old line conservatives in, owners of teams, I'm sure, who were big.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's the big issue with the NFL, is that like the vast majority of the owners are old white guys who donated to Trump's campaign and voted for Trump's campaign. And they're the ones who signed the checks. Like, players, we don't sign our own checks. The owners are the ones who signed the checks. And I mean, you clearly saw that with Colin Kaepernick, right? Like, regardless of your feelings on how good of a quarterback Colin Kaepernick was, he was definitely good enough to be one of 32 people playing in the NFL.
That was right. Whether he's one of the top 5 or not, he was good enough to be in the NFL.
Right, exactly. And yeah, it was very clear that they ran him out due to his activism. And and it's unfortunate, because as athletes, we're human beings. We live in the same society as everyone else. Like, we live in the same world as everyone else. We should be allowed to care about the world just like everyone else. And because we have a platform, we should use it for good, right? Like, we should use it to help other people.
Well, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm quite sure, and I'm trying to think of specific examples, but they'll come to me, of various members of various teams coming out and either wearing a MAGA hat or saying they were pro-Trump or, whatever it might be. And I don't remember them getting kicked off teams and banned anybody for that.
Right. So certain types of political speech are okay political speech.
Right. Exactly. It's all in the context of it, of course.
Yep.
And so what age were you at that point?
Let's see, 2013, I would have been 32, I believe, 31 or 32.
That's what I thought. The math somewhere in there. So, I mean, like they screwed you. You had some years left, because especially punters have gone to like 40 before, right?
Right. Yeah. I was still planning on playing at least another like 7 or 8 years, because normally what ends up happening as a punter, like, once you make it past those first couple of years and you're established, usually you stay established for like 14 to 15 years with your team. Like, unless you absolutely fall off a cliff, like they're going to go with the known commodity, and you'll be the guy. Right.
Were there any other, like, isn't there a Canadian football league, or were there other leagues you could look at where you could play in, or it just wasn't worth it?
I was at that point, I was just kind of like, well, I see how this has gone. I was fortunate enough to, have been wise with investing my money and making sure that I saved it instead of blowing it all right away as I got it. So
not sort of like just a Lamborghini and a whole bunch of cocaine driving around.
Right. Kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. I went the alternative route, trying not to appear on an ESPN 30 for 30 documentary.
So, right.
Yeah. but also at that point my wife started working, and we had talked about it back when I was playing, that like while I was playing she'd be the stay-at-home mom, because I think our kids were like 2 and 4 or something like that at that point. And so once I was done, she wanted to pursue her career, and I was like, okay, well now I'll be the stay-at-home dad, like I'll be the one in charge of doing all the stuff, so you can go do what you want to do, because again that's only fair, right? Like I got my
so you
chance.
believe in fairness and equality for women too, not just the
I know it's
community?
weird.
What the hell, man?
It's a strange stance to take, I know.
What are you going to be for next? Universal voting?
Right? Healthcare?
Exactly.
maybe a federal holiday that lasts an entire week so everyone can go out and vote.
Isn't that insane? Who could think of that? I think we should have all other random holidays for people. Even we should keep ones for, let's say, mass murderers like Chris Columbus, but we shouldn't definitely not have one for the day when people vote.
For the foundational bedrock of our political system. Nope.
Exactly.
Let's just make people do that on their own time.
Right. Exactly. Figure it out. I mean, I know you've got a boss and, you're in a place where you need a car, but you can't afford one. And you got to get on a bus for an hour each way, and you're getting paid minimum wage, and all of that. And you can't get there in time, but figure it out. You'll do it.
Right. Yeah.
I always talk about that stuff because people don't get, look, I don't take a position on whether I think these guys have cheated electronically, because I don't know.
Right.
I certainly would say I am absolutely open to it being shown to me, because I know they would if they could. I don't trust them one bit. I just don't know either way. What I do know from the work I've done and just living here in Ohio, where if you miss 2 elections in a row, our unbelievable jackass of a Secretary of State, LaRose would strike you off of and say, oh, well, you're not interested in voting anymore. I had never missed an election. I pointed out to people in my life. And in 2013, we had, I think it was like a mayoral election that day here and a few other things. I missed it because my dad died and I flew back to New York. I think it's a pretty good reason to miss one. And so that's the only election in my life I've missed. Well, if I'd missed a second one because something that big happened that day, that would be enough for them to purge me. And so when you look at the ones in Georgia, in Ohio, in Texas, in Florida, and so many of these states, bigger states too, that have Republican secretaries of state, even if they never did a single thing with a machine, they've cheated already and stolen 500,000 votes, I'd say at the very least from us, if not God knows how many more.
For sure.
And stuff that they do. And we never talk about that.
And even not just that, the fact that in a lot of those states, you have to wait for 6, 7, 8 hours just to vote. Because they're deliberately closing down polling stations. They're deliberately understaffing these areas because they don't want people to show up in certain areas because they know they're not going to vote for Republicans. And then
the Russians magically call in bomb threats, which I'm sure after that display in the White House the other day, it has no connection to them liking Trump. It's weird how it was just in like Detroit and Madison and places like that. I mean, I can't see if you put up sort of the Venn diagram, I can't figure it out.
Right. Yeah. There's no overlap there. It's
no.
I will say, as an American, it's a really dark day for the country when Russian state media says, thank you for American interests for aligning exactly with what we want to do. That's not a proud moment.
Now you have trouble with that now because, you stood up then, during those times. I'm sure you have at times since done plenty, and I may not have been in the news, or I may have just missed it. Obviously, saw what you did in Huntington Beach. Have you had any trouble? Like this, for me, the first time this past election, because I could accept. It's hard for me to accept, but I could accept people being fooled with Trump the first time.
Right.
But this time, it is the first time where I was like, I don't know that I'm proud of the country I'm from anymore. Like I have to grapple with this. That we put in place documents that we didn't live up to, but we tried to, and we always improved. And those documents were used by countries across the world to create democracies.
Right.
And I'm not erasing all of the awful stuff we did in between. We committed genocide of Native Americans. We had slavery. We went around the world and invaded countries. I could go on, but my point is that all these other countries were doing all of that too, and also never had any documents where they were even trying to become something better. And so I'd argue at least we were trying to become something better.
And that's the thing is that, like, I know we haven't lived up to the American dream, but I think it's an ideal worth striving for. And the one thing I would like people to really get and understand, especially people who didn't vote in this last election, who may not be politically savvy, who are happening, to listen to the show, is that when I was speaking out before for LGBTQ rights, like, it still felt like we were operating in the bounds of the American political system, that both sides would present their points, there would be a vote, then we would abide by the outcome. Now it feels like we have one side that wants to be America, and we have one side that wants to be something else. And whatever it is, it's not America, because regardless of your political affiliation, you can't wave an American flag and support a guy with a crown on his head. Like those two things literally cannot coexist.
They cannot. And I'm not getting one of those golden Trump diapers that I've seen some of them wear at those, right? They have actually at a couple of those rallies. I wish that were a joke, but it's not.
Well, because the whole thing's a grift. It's a scam. And like in that way, Donald Trump is quintessentially an American, in that he wants to scam as many people as he can, and he doesn't care about the consequences of it. Like it just Wired actually just came out with a story today where business leaders have been paying up to $5 million to have personal meetings with the president. And to me, an uninformed person, that sounds a lot like bribery.
Yeah, I'm an uninformed person apparently too. I thought paying somebody for any kind of gain that you get, including a meeting, would fall under the rubric of bribery. How crazy!
Political corruption.
Right. And, sometimes it's just you have a hotel in D.C. and the Saudis rent out a whole floor. I mean, they don't show up. I'm sure they just need the extra space for something or other, right?
Yeah.
Who knows?
And then this whole thing, I think it's exemplified the most with this whole idea of creating a strategic cryptocurrency reserve. Like, that does nothing for us as a nation. All it does is use taxpayer dollars to help people who bought in crypto get out of crypto, because they know it's a tumbling pyramid and it's going to fall apart, and they want to get out while they can still get some money.
And that's why I think all these guys, the Musks and the Thiels and all of them, they're behind Trump, because I mean, their whole thing is they belong to this crazy cultish, tech bro fascist movement where they think they're better than the rest of us. I'd argue if you've seen that picture of Elon Musk on a yacht with his shirt off, I don't think he could make that argument, but okay.
Right.
And B, they also think that they wanted to, some of the things start making sense in a scary way. Is you destroy the dollar enough, they want cryptocurrency to be the reserve, the world, and like, that's frightening.
Yes. Well, so they've legitimately talked about their plans, like, and their plans are to tear down American democracy. And for people who don't know, Peter Thiel obviously is a good one to look up. Curtis Yarvin is another guy to look up, because he wrote the playbook for what they're doing, and he explicitly calls for the destruction of American democracy and the rise of a sort of corporate technocracy, right? Where it's going to be each corporation will have its own little fiefdom and make their own rules. I don't particularly want to live in a Shadowrun future. Like, that's not the world I want to live in.
No, I saw Blade Runner and I thought that wasn't a good outcome for
right. Yeah, it's not a good ending. But yeah, like they've told people, like, this is what they're going to do, and they're in the process of doing it, which again is why we as citizens need to come together and realize, like, this isn't a right versus left thing anymore. Like, this is an existential crisis for our country, and if we want to keep our democracy, we're going to have to show up and save it.
That's right. And we try to talk about that all the time. Tony was on earlier, and I do. It's monopolies. It's billionaire tech bros, monopolies, and that against everybody else. And MAGA folks, your everyday MAGA folks are feeling that now, because you're seeing lots of videos and whatever. Like, I didn't think this was going to happen, or I didn't, and look, I'm as angry at them as anybody else. I've done videos where I've said, too damn bad for you, whatever. I get mad. I get whatever. In the end, we have to bring some of those folks in and say, okay, if you understand what this is now, join with us, because we have to have a majority and a convincing one to crush politically what these guys are doing.
Right. Yeah. Like, one of the big things I've been trying to say is that there were a lot of good Germans who followed Adolf Hitler and voted for him because they thought he had their best interests in mind. And then after all the bodies finished falling, they had a lot of regrets. I know there are a lot of good Americans who voted for Donald Trump because they thought he had their best interests in mind. And he has very clearly shown he only has his own interests in mind. So I would prefer to avoid all the parts that lead up to the bodies starting to fall and then you end up with regrets. I'd rather we just stop it right now, so that way we don't cause widespread fear and misery and terror and chaos.
Right. And we've seen that, there's no Republican who's going to do it. Certainly not Mike Johnson. And, so, I mean, it has to be that we bring folks and bring the kind of pressure to do that. I have been pleased, I will say, granted, we haven't seen much from the Supreme Court, but that the courts so far, even Trump appointees, have held and have basically rejected everything that he's tried to do. So that's a positive. A new generation of Democrats stepping up and refusing the kind of old posture. I'm not saying we still don't have ways to go, but starting to hit hard, starting to be aggressive and control, the narrative, as one would say. I think there are things to kind of at least give us some hope going forward.
Right.
And we should be a part of it, right? Like, you're here, I'm here. There are a lot of people in here who are listening to this who are going to go out. Like, I just try to remind people, everybody makes a difference. Doesn't matter if a couple friends and one of them's on the fence, you go talk to them, go out for a beer, you change one mind. There's someone I was reading the other day about one of the awful, what's her name, Meeks in Iowa, congresswoman who supported all the cuts, these government cuts, even though they're going to destroy like the University of Iowa and all of this stuff that gets all this federal funding. And I point out to people that the first time she won by 6 votes in a swing district, every vote matters in this thing. And so before, I mean, I know we'd said you've got stuff you got to go do and whatever, but the quick rundown. So after you left the NFL, you had a column at Deadspin for a while, right? And was that kind of while you took care of the kids, and then you just said, I'll become really, really good at gaming and a bassist for Tripping Icarus and play shows and write some novels. And I don't even know what else you did. You just
I have a lot of hobbies. I've always been a huge nerd my entire life. So I love reading. I love science fiction, fantasy. I love playing video games. And I also just happen to be really good at sports. So it
works.
Yeah, basically football funded all the hobbies and stuff that I wanted to do. So yeah, no, I like to do things. I like to do them well. And I think it's important that, people are allowed to do their hobbies, right? Because everyone has a hobby. Everyone wants to do something. Like, just because you want to hunt and fish doesn't make your hobby any better or worse. It just makes it not my hobby. And just like I play video games, doesn't make it any better or worse. That just makes it my hobby. Like, and so
no, you're completely right. I make this show about that all the time. I say to people, I love rock and roll, right? I'm going to talk about it sometimes. I love, some of the streaming shows that are out there, action films, stuff like that, spy thrillers. It's going to come up. I've got 4 cats because I'm crazy. I love them. They're going to come up in conversation here. They're things I love, and the other things I try to achieve on the side outside of this. And, I've been a writer for a long time, and a lot of it's about politics, but written, on culture and other things. And because I like to write, we should all be, do the things that we enjoy doing.
Well,
so
and people are multifaceted. Like people have a wide variety of interests, and in an ideal society, we allow people the chance to explore those interests. But in order to do that, they need a living wage, they need healthcare, and they need some place to live. And
family leave. So if there's a child getting off from work, the stuff that all the other Western democracies have figured out.
Yes, it's because again, it just helps us as a country as a whole. People who are happy with what they're doing are more likely to keep doing it and doing it at a high level. If you don't like what you're doing, like it's very hard to muster up the enthusiasm to do it well.
And every one of those studies, whether if you feel more economically secure, you're going to work harder, you're going to be more comfortable. If you feel like your work is valued instead of some boss screaming at you all the time, you're going to be more productive. Like, these aren't crazy concepts. They're just things that even before Trump, the corrupt corporate right led by Mitch McConnell had to try to bury places, because you can't keep, deregulating business and cutting taxes for companies and rich people if people find out, oh my God, we could have it so much differently and it could be so much better.
My life could be better if the billionaires were taxed a little bit more.
Exactly, which hopefully we'll get there. So of all of those cool things, what are you doing now, and what are things that you want to promote, you want folks to know about? I know you wrote a novel, but I don't know how long ago it was, like things like that.
Sure. Yeah. So I've written 2 books. One is called Otaku. It's a science fiction book that came out, I think, in 2020. Pro tip to any aspiring authors out there: don't release your book when COVID is starting to hit. Then
makes the book tour really hard, doesn't it?
Yeah, the book tour kind of went away. So, but yeah, other than that, yeah, the other book was a collection of short stories and essays called Beautifully Unique Sparkle Ponies. You can probably find that online somewhere. That one came out.
That one I've got.
That one was a lot of fun to write. Yeah, other than that, I'm just kind of stay-at-home dad, taking care of my kids, just apparently a local troublemaker now. And
yes, look at you.
Right.
What, are you still playing any shows?
Yeah, in the band. No, unfortunately, the other 3 guys still live in Minnesota, and we still talk with each other. We're still friends. It's very hard to practice music when when one person's in California, and the other 3 are in Minnesota.
So that's okay. I've got that part. So that's when the band was really. It was when you were in Minnesota.
When I was in Minnesota. Yeah. So it was cool. It was really fun because we had a lot of really cool experiences. We got to play the main stage at First Avenue one time. And then we got to play 7th Street Entry a couple times, a bunch of the other, kind of local clubs there. So that was a lot of fun. I mean, there's a lot of music history in Minnesota.
I mean, it's amazing. I was there for, I was part of, they allowed me to even show up at this thing that was done by Hal Sparks and John Fugelsang and Stephanie Miller, a bunch of people, the Sexy Liberal Comedy Show where they go around the country and they do stuff. And they let me show up, on stage and be a part of that. And the one in Minneapolis, and I'd been to Minneapolis before, but you went on how I got put in touch with you by Matt McNeil, who's just a terrific guy. Who's on the radio there. I got taken around and shown everything. And it was just like, Prince here and Bob Dylan there, and obviously that movie's out now, and like even smaller, like the music scene there is incredible. Like I remember going out to brunch somewhere, and somebody pointed out like, hey, you see that across the street there? That's Marcy's Playground is the name of it. I'm like, oh, right. Yep. I think I've heard of that before. And so it's like amazing how many, like we've got an interesting scene of actors. Like of, Sarah Jessica Parker and George Clooney and people like that came out of this area because this was once like the radio capital of the country. So when you made your name in radio, like Rosemary Clooney was in radio here is how she became a star originally, George Clooney's aunt. So that's but we haven't had as much like that music, scene that you have there. And that's just, man, I love music. So that was really cool to go and kind of see some of that when I was there. Any music scene in Huntington Beach or not as much?
Yeah. So actually, so the Offspring are from here. Avenged Sevenfold are from here. Yeah, like this. No doubt it's from Orange County. Like this, there's a lot of music in kind of the Orange County, LA area.
Well, that's funny. Yeah, I don't know Orange County like completely. I mean, I've been to LA a ton. I've been down to Orange County, but when I did that crazy 12-hour live stream on Substack to kick it off a week ago, I met through some stuff. I did Phil Collin of Def Leppard. He lives in Orange County, and he was like showing everybody his studio and took out the guitar and started riffing. So there's certainly are folks in Orange County who can jam.
No, there's a good music scene around here. So, but yeah, no, I think I guess maybe the last thing I would say for anyone who's interested in getting active and sort of like paying attention to what's going on in the political atmosphere. 2 things I can recommend: show up to your local city council meetings, because that's where you'll find people who are invested, in what's going on, and that can help you make local connections. And then Indivisible is actually doing a lot of really good work in terms of getting people together at a grassroots level to, essentially just say, hey, we're tired of this. We're going to start banding together and organizing, and we're going to make our voices heard. So yeah, everything starts at the local level. Find your local connections, find your community, get together with them, and then that's together, everyone working together. Like that's how we can change stuff.
Because everyone can do that, right? Like not everybody most of you were smart enough not to go into the career I went into. And so you haven't had to deal with some of the things on the national level. In all seriousness though, even when I'm doing political work and mostly retired as a consultant now, but when I was doing all of that, still was getting involved in things locally, because there's just, when you bring up like parks, environment, all those things, so much of that is decided on a local level. And, if you want to protect that. Well, listen, I know your time is valuable as a father, as someone who likes to spend time with their kids too, but also just you've got 47,000 hobbies, and you're like also, out there fighting the fight. And I mean, honestly, I can't I couldn't say enough good things about you. So I'll just say, how appreciative. I know everybody in this room. I know how appreciative I am. I know, yes, I loved that beautiful name of that column when you wrote it, but I also wrote what, and you said that maybe they came up with the name of it, but what you wrote in there and what you talked about, inspired me in a lot of ways as somebody who was already fighting this fight, that you were willing to step up and you risk what you're willing to risk, because it's easy to say I'm willing to risk it. And then there's doing it, like when the time comes. And, I always say that courage is contagious. And so even folks seeing you on the news or seeing you on this show or seeing you places, like that's going to say to some people, okay, he's willing to do that. I can do that. And I think, so we're lucky to have people like you out there. And, thank you for everything that you do.
Well,
Chris.
thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to have me on here. And yeah, for me, I'm never going to ask someone to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. So, so to all you Democratic elected officials that are out there, I did it. You can do it.
He's
too.
been arrested. Any of you, and I have, by the way, before too. So anybody else who hasn't been on the Democratic side, if that's what you need to do, I don't want to hear how much you don't like what they're doing. I want show me, don't tell me. How about
show
that?
Us. Yep.
Listen, Chris, take care of yourself. Good luck. Keep me updated and keep all of us updated on what happens, with the ACLU. I don't know if are they pressing charges against you? Or are they trying to come after you still?
Yes. Yeah, there's a criminal charge against me. It's a misdemeanor disturbing an assembly. So we'll see what happens with that.
Woo. I know, right? I can't imagine. Well, you could always reach out to Trump and see, say you're like January 6th, you deserve it.
Right. Yeah. I was peacefully protesting by smearing crap on the walls and breaking windows.
If maybe that's what you should have done, is smeared some feces and kicked in a window there, and then he would have let you out. Right? Okay. Even for jokes, I'm not going to take more of your time. I really, great to meet you. I appreciate you so much. And I'll reach out at some point in the future and we'll try to get an update here on what's going on. But thanks, my friend. And good luck today at that meeting.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And again, thank you and everyone who's listening.
Absolutely. Take care. All right, guys. That was pretty incredible opportunity. He is one cool dude. I mean, what do you say? Willing to put it all on the line. How many people actually are? A lot of people say they are, but again, like he didn't want to go into so much about, himself, but I mean, he gave up years of his career to fight for what he believed in, to speak out about what he believed in. I mean, you can actually calculate that. And, when you know what football players make and what they were making back around then in the 2000 teens, millions, he gave millions of dollars to fight for people because he realized, as he put it, not everyone, is as lucky as he is, in the way that he had this talent where he was financially okay, but he understands as a white straight guy, you're less likely to suffer a lot of the slings and arrows, let's say, that other folks do. I am glad that was the sort of body of the show. I don't have a ton to add to that. I also funny that we're joking about both being happy, proud fathers, because today I have to go and pick a son up at school because another son is doing something different. And so I didn't originally plan. I thought maybe today I'd have till more towards, let's put Chris's, up there. I'd have more towards 4 o'clock, but I do not. I've got sort of a couple more minutes. So, I don't want to do the hard sell or pitch, but folks, you want me to keep doing interviews like this, please support me on Patreon. Go join. Please, Substack, blueamp.substack.com. We're growing there. And, obviously, we are not unfans here of, as much as I don't like to ask, of super chats and super stickers. So I may just have to do a quick who's coming with me? Who's coming with? Oh, Francie already jumped in. Francie's coming with me. See how that goes. And quickly, I always have to show everybody, so we're going to do that. We got WW's been a member for 4 months. Thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you a lot. 4 months is excellent. Francie, who just gave a $2 super sticker. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Sheldon Hughes, what would we do without him? Thanks, Cliff, for having Chris on as a guest. What a fantastic person and fighter. He is amazing. The real deal. Thank you, Sheldon, as always, for supporting everything I do here. We have Bone Loads, which is a cool name. I like the graphic there. We love you, Chris. Thank you for everything. Hopefully he saw that. I know he's checking out comments, but I'll try to send stuff along to him so he knows. We've got Carl Jacobson, member for 5 months. All right. I mean, that's pretty much since the very beginning. I mean, really, I think that's about how long I've been doing this. So, and you're a new member. Carl Jacobson became a YouTube member, and you've been a member for 5 months. And you're the same person. Are there two of you? Whatever it is, Carl, I don't care. You're here and you're a member, and you've been a member for 5 months, and you're outstanding. And Sheldon, thought I'd start the show with my usual $2. Thank you, Sheldon. Appreciate that. That was from before. We have, Arizona Sunflowers, Arizona Sunflowers, $9.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. That is huge and very, very helpful. Petrazi, 20 with a $10 super sticker. Again, thank you. When the time it takes to sort of prepare and have someone like Chris Kluwe on, I'm going to get the name right. That is what this lets me do besides, infrastructure and the rest. Of course, what else would we do without Sheldon Hughes, another $2? You guys are all fantastic. I'll say, if you can, please join Substack or Patreon. Keep supporting us here. We will be back tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Hopefully a longer show, because I will not be running to grab my kid from school. But, you guys are the best. I love your support. I love how many people are here. And as we say whenever we end this show, as the sun sets slowly in the west, my friends, I bid you a fond farewell.